June, believe it or not, I spent the weekend getting some final edits back into the senior editor at the National Academies, and this should be published, I believe, before the end of the year. So, like I said, this was about maximizing proceeds of the fleet asset disposal several process. I will tell you right now, unlike the project that was presented on yesterday, 1308, which I think So this was based on your all's needs. I think there was a general perception that you folks struggled to get what you felt like was market price out of your equipment at disposal. And there was at least an idea that if you were able to try to use some different sales channels or different techniques that you might be able to improve the proceeds. So that was my offices for the project with them and try to see if they could actually build on that. Excuse me, see if we could actually support that with our research. We did do a pretty, there are always a lot of work involved in trying to research this stuff, especially for you folks. It's not like the library's got book after book after book on DOT practices in all these little areas. So what we really did was rely on a lot of surveys and interviews and everything else with you and your peers. That's what we did here. We did a survey of the DOT fleet managers, some of you hopefully participated in this thing. And what we found from that survey was that there was a lot of variance from state to state in terms of what you could and could not do. It was pretty in some states, the DOT had either direct or delegated authority to dispose of its own equipment, and a lot of other states that did. It was by statute or otherwise they were directed to give their equipment to another agency, or otherwise they were dictated as to how they can dispose of it. So that's what when I started out by saying that unlike the prior project, this one does have some constraints on your application. That's what we're talking about. So I know there's no shortage of probably a good 20% of the states said that another state agency disposed of their equipment and they had no control over it. And in lots of cases they didn't even get the money back from it. They went to another department, and of course in those cases, let's face it, there's not much motivation for you guys to fashion some situation and spend a lot of time and effort trying to improve the returns on something you don't get. So that was the reality of it. In some other states, and I suspect some of you in this room that you were obliged to offer your equipment to other public agencies, either local government or otherwise. And a lot of the feedback we got was that in some of those cases, those prices that you received on those sales were not what you perceived as really good market prices. You were selling your equipment cheaper than you should be most. And that, and what we pointed out in this guide is if you're in a state where you're doing that and you're forced to do that by legislation, executive order, or whatever, that if you're actually selling your equipment for less than it's worth, you're effectively subsidizing another agency. And that's a good point to make sure that, that's why I say this research targets various stakeholders. In some cases, you throw your boss off and go to someone and say, listen, we like to help these other agencies, but they need to pay their way. We're not going to do business to subsidize them with our tax money. But anyway, that's the point about this. Trade-in programs, I'm looking around. I know Doug in Ohio and Jim in Connecticut. A number of DOTs have done some pretty interesting things with trade-in programs, and certainly there's a lot of administrative advantages to that. In fact, in the case of Doug and Jim, I think they've actually been able to probably improve. It's not only do they not have a headache of trying to run options, I think they've actually been able to at least get market-based prices for their trade-in programs, if not actually improve the returns they're getting. So that was one of the strategies for trying to get rid of equipment that we discussed and mentioned in the mentioned in the report. We think it's a really attractive option for if your state allows you to do that in most cases. Guaranteed buyback. This is a program I think most of you would be familiar with. It's been around for a long time. Basically, you buy I call it the buy-sell proposition. You buy the equipment up front, and at some point in the future, typically 4 or 5 years down the road, you sell the equipment back to the vendors that you bought it from at an agreed-upon price. And there's always some conditions, terms and conditions in terms of the condition of the equipment yellow iron, I think we all know what we're talking about, the off-road. A lot of the yellow iron, the DOTs can get government pricing is actually below what the dealers can buy that equipment for. That's sort of at the heart of some of this guaranteed buyback, but in places that's available, that's turned out to be probably the most, the program, at least our research suggests, had the greatest return when it was available. And we talked about it a little bit in 6 years. If you've not done it in the past, it takes some research to figure out if it's legal in your state. You have to turn around and build talk with the dealers and feel that they're willing to try to support this. But anyway, it's a really good way to do it. The last point is probably the most important point in this whole document and in our tools is know the customer. The bottom line, and this was the thing that we found the weakness at the DOTs is you guys do a wonderful job buying equipment. You have core competency in buying equipment. You get equipment at good prices. You're able to negotiate from a position of strength with the market, with the vendor. You're not in the business to sell equipment, and you just get to do a really good job at it. Not a lot of the degree to which the DOTs market their sales or their disposal auctions or whatever is very all over the place. There's almost no research on who's buying this equipment, why do they buy this equipment, what's their experience with this disposal process, what problems did they like, what did they dislike, when's the last time you actually bought something from somebody and you just walked in and they knew nothing about who you were. Because let's face it, all the television ads, all the internet, they're all targeting you as a consumer. And in this case, you're on the other side, you're in the sales position. I guess I started to ask this right up front, but I'd be curious as how many people in this room have ever sold cars for a living or sold equipment for a living? Anybody in this group? I have. It is a tough job. I did it. I was one of the worst 3 months of my life. But it gets interesting inside to deal with that. So, and of course, we're going to talk about one of the big things here is convenience. That's a theme of this report. I'm going to start on here in a couple of slides. The bottom line is, this was what our research found was that, that this was some of the issues that were driving their practices. We used something in this project called Delphi panel. We had to actually explain this to the panel because it's not, honestly, I thought I knew what this thing, a Delphi panel was. I couldn't find out I was wrong. It wasn't exactly what I thought it was. A Delphi panel was called a blind process. You give a series, or you get people who are experts in a given field. In this case, we're talking about equipment disposal. We actually got 3 or 4 DOT people, we got 3 or 4 private sector equipment operators that have sold their own equipment or handled their own equipment. We got some equipment rental agencies, like Canipe, Sunbelt, and we brought these guys together. They didn't know who the other people on the panel was. They were just responding to a series of guided questions, given their experience on what their success or lack of success does for various things. And what we do is each time they would be with like 3 or 4 rounds. The first round was they answered a series of questions. And then those responses were shared back to those folks, and they didn't know who made what responses. And the real idea behind that is in most groups you got 1 or 2 people that tend to be a little more outspoken like me, that tend to dominate the conversation, or maybe there's somebody who's considered this to be a real, this guy knows everything about this business, and you tend to defer to them. That's the whole idea behind this, is you don't create a dynamic where you're not influenced by the other people. So we went through this, several iterations of this thing, and we found that in this particular category, that's a good lead up to that first bullet. Commercial auction and company-owned facility was referred to auction and vendor facility. This is completely reflective of what I was saying about people who own their own equipment in the private sector or people who are in the rental business. What price. Buy it, you don't have to. And that's a lot of their sales, a lot of their sales. You come up out on your yard and say, I need a land lift out there. You got half a dozen. Would you be willing to sell one? Yeah. If you give one right price, they'll sell it to you. That's why they dispose of a lot of their equipment. That's not something you folks can do. It's not like somebody can drive into your car and say, I like to pick it up, what do you pay for it? You know, that's not an option, but that's the reason I put the emphasis on that was you take the socialist Delphi panel, some really good information, but it had limited application for folks. Marketing, we did find that, especially the folks that were in the equipment running business or on their own equipment, they did a fair bit of marketing. I mean, they were good at it. They wanted flyers, they had a list of the people who bought from them before, they would literally pick the phone up and call them, they send them emails, they would advertise. So I mean, they did it like they were in the car business when you said. So they found that there was a lot of that going on, as well as, and this is something we talked about, I wasn't really particularly familiar with, a broker sale arrangement. Essentially, a broker comes in here, he looks at the equipment you got, he says, listen, if I can find buyers for this equipment at a good price, you will pay me a commission on it. And that happens a fair bit in this kind of market. These guys go out and call on the private sector contractors and say, what do you need? What do you need equipment? I know you can't buy everything, what do you use? They actually a fair bit of equipment use in these broker markets. The other thing they do, and this is one of the lessons from the surveys as well, was they put a little money into making sure the equipment looked good. I mean, I don't know about you, but you think if you're a fleet professional, you wouldn't think too much about the car's got a lot of dust on it, or heck, it's got a flat tire. If you're in the business, that stuff doesn't worry you too much. You must have the kind of stuff. But if you're the general for most consumers, you're going to be hard pressed to get to the side about buying something that just doesn't look good, or it's got a dead battery, it's got a cracked windshield. These guys will spend money to fix those minor details that make the dust more attractive. It broadens the market. So, and that other thing they really were very adamant on was you got to make sure that the person buying it knows this thing will run and do what it was supposed to do. The car start, back it up, they go for it. Well, that excavator, you raise the budget, you want a bucket. So if they get it demonstrated, then they're buying bigger bucket. And that's not a good way to try to get pop. I've already, I think, beat on most of these points, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I think the key point there is that in the private sector, they have options available to them to dispose of equipment. It's not available. That's a reality. That's what I just talked about. We don't have the ability to offer opportunity-based sales. And let's face it, the private sector, there's both a stronger appetite for risk and a stronger rewards for taking risk. The bottom line was, if you're the equipment manager for this yard, and you can get a bonus on if you sell increase the amount of value you get out of the equipment you dispose of, hey, you might get 10% of the difference. You probably won't get a bonus. And if you fail, if it doesn't work, they tend to, they say, wait, we learned something. It's not going to give up on it yet. There's just a greater risk tolerance and a stronger reward system in place for the private sector. So that's something that really makes, in some cases, hard to bring some of these lessons in for you folks. But it's an acknowledgement of the reality of trying to sell this equipment. So here were some of the major things from our research here. Essentially, the basic economic principles of supply and demand apply. The reality is, the more buyers that you have, or the more interested buyers you have, for the assets you have available, the greater the likelihood is that you're going to increase the returns of the amount of price you're going to get. That's one of the key messages from all of this stuff, is that the key to getting better returns is to attract more people to your sales and whatnot. And I mentioned earlier this convenience concept. It comes into the way of trying to make it easier convenient or inconvenient was it? You know, I mean, in lots of cases, let's face it, we found that lots of auctions were as is where it is. You got 24 hours to get it off the yard, cash on the barrelhead or cashier's check. All those things are convenient for you, the seller, but they're not very convenient for the buyer, and it just reduces those buyer pools and the number of people that's willing to, I go yourself and say, well, I really like that thing, that's pretty low, I can't take my hands on $6,000-7,000 in the next 4 hours. I just, I don't have it, can't get to it. It might be on Saturday morning, my wife's closed. So anyway, that was some of the themes of this stuff that you really need to think about convenience in here. And I mean, that's convenience for the buyer, convenience for the seller. That example I said, that was convenient for the seller, but it wasn't very convenient for the buyer. So the number of buyers was lower, and prices should sit with people. It was pretty simple. I'm not going to take the time to read through these. I think we recognize most of it. I guess fundamentally, and I think I've heard this, I've been coming to these conferences for over 20 years. I've been doing this, I've spent the first 24 years of my career in the trucking industry. And I've been a consultant for the last 20-some years. And the bottom line is, ever since I've been in this DOT world, the problem has been you never had enough money to fund all the equipment replacement that you wanted or that you needed. So you ended up running equipment longer than you wanted to. So you ended up running past its life cycle, and you got next to nothing out of it. Well, our research has supported those findings. The bottom line is that there is a sweet spot in the life of the vehicle where you got the opportunity to make the most money in terms of leveraging this information and this research to try to improve your research return. And it's not at the tail end of the process. People don't want to buy assets that still have some life. If they're at the end of their life, the number of people willing to buy equipment that's at the end and near the end of its life is pretty small. That's what a lot of your equipment is sold. If you can sell that equipment earlier, it's not necessarily, you got to trade off. I talk about capital costs and operating costs. You got to watch those trade-offs to make sure that you're good, being smart. But the reality is somewhere in that half of its life, maybe 75% of its life, so it's still got 25-30% of its life available. You've got a big opportunity. If you do a good job with sales, that you can really increase your returns. That was one of the findings. We actually had some research to back that up in the report. But again, I think this is fairly common sense. There's only a couple of DOTs that we found that really been able to do that. I think some of you, how many in this room have heard Stan and Carlton from Alabama talk about their program? I know there's a few folks in here. Stan and I, it's really difficult, be very difficult to repeat. They've actually got some legislation that protects their fleet from it. You can't get touched. I don't know how easy that would be to repeat. But the bottom line is Stan has driven his big guts in about 4 years. He's driven his dump trucks in about 6-7 years. He is getting good money on that equipment. I mean, not just because it's young, he's actually getting, he's leveraging the fact that he can attract a larger buyer pool. They've been doing it for almost 20 years. He has equipment auctions where there's 200 people comes to these things because they know that this equipment has been taken care of. They've got maintenance service on this equipment, and that is one of the things that we found was important. It's information, and they were able to get really good returns. That's a big ask for a lot of you folks. But it does point out that it's really part of the problem we have is if you wait until it's right there and you know that thing's good, get it off the yard store, only strap back. It's hard to leverage the information. That's just part of the message. This is with and I'm watching the clock here, so I'm trying to see if there's a few slides. The bottom line is, in the report, we talk about all these different buyers. And that, again, you need to focus on your buyers, direct to the public agency. We talk about that. That's the local Doug, if there's I think there's still a slide deck on the NCHRP website, if I'm not mistaken, on Doug's work with in Ohio, and Jim gave a presentation last summer in Orlando on his program. I would just encourage you to look at those. I think they've got some really interesting things going on there, and I think it's something that most DOTs can build on. I have a little work on it. It's a really good approach, and I've already talked about that. So, again, as an emphasis of trying to speed up a little bit, this simply, what we're saying is each buyer has its own characteristics, its own motivations. If you were in the car sales business or the equipment sales business, you would recognize you don't approach these different clients the same way. They've all got the things that motivate them. They've all got the, pluses or things that you can do to attract them, things that keep them away. The more you look towards a retail buyer, the higher the potential typically is for making money. But those are the buyers that require the most hand-holding. They're the guys that like to say about, if you can offer a warranty, that's one of the advantages of using like the auctions at the end of the facility. Those guys can offer financing, they can offer warranties, they can offer other things that make it an easier sell, more convenient for the buyer. That's one of the reasons in some cases to use that approach, because they can offer this. But anyway, the long and short of it, each of these type of buyers have some different things that motivate them, and it's important to keep those in mind when you're trying to track this. Profit margin, in general, there's some different profit margins. Some of these options are more available than some DOTs and others. For instance, international buyers back a few years ago, especially when we first went to Tier 3, Tier 4 emissions, a lot of the old equipment, the old Tier 1 or Tier 2, ended up in South America or somewhere else in the world. And I know folks that were close to the port facilities were able to get really good margins after we were in Kansas or Iowa. So it was tougher for them to try to get that equipment to a port cost effectively. So that's maybe not an option for you. And of course, it's logical, though, there's your contractor, maybe the people who support you, the people who do some of your work, they're potential customers, because especially like blind stoppers, snoopers, stuff that don't hardly anybody did. That's the only people out there that really, besides your other DOTs that use this equipment. So, that's can be your potential customer. But again, it's all about knowing your customer and finding out what motivates them. I think I've hit on these points pretty hard already. Clean your equipment, provide information. This is one where I was really surprised that the results of the DOT people were very different from the results of, we also include some local government people. DOTs typically were not providing maintenance history. They weren't providing PM history. They weren't providing, and I asked why not. This was one in the survey. This is one of the things that, at least in the private sector, I said, this is really improves your returns. Is if you provide information on what work has been done the cause. If you don't provide that information, the buyers just will assume nothing's been done with the equipment. In the face of, they say, well, the reason that we haven't done it is we don't have good records. A lot of ours, the operators who were performing things don't have good records. I think it was pretty clear from our research that in the absence of information, the buyers don't assume the worst. So information is a little spotty, it's better than no information. It will flat improve your returns if you can. Now, in some states, I've also heard that they don't do that because they're afraid that piece of equipment is a ball and ass and they'll try to come back on the DOT. I can't speak to that. That's what I'm talking about, the risk tolerance of the private sector. But in any case, that was something clearly found was that providing maintenance information on the equipment was a proven way of improving the amount of maintenance. In developing the market, I talk buyer doesn't want, he wants to reduce his risk, and if you can help him reduce his risk, he's willing to pay. That's a basic axiom. I've already mentioned these things, but I'm spending time talking about them. I will say that in that last one there, that when you start going down the road trying some of the lessons from this research, one of the things we say is, like all this research, we come up with information that's intended to apply nationwide. At any given local market, that you're going to the entire nation. And that's true, even in North Carolina, we go from the western end of the state to the eastern end of the state, and buyer markets are very different. So, if you have to take things with a grain of salt, and in fact, what we're really saying is if you really want to get serious about this, you may not have time to do it yourself, but it may be a good opportunity, and we actually recommend this. Contact a local university that has a marketing class, and ask the professor there if they'd be willing to do a little market survey, try and sell your equipment, and try to figure out if there's a better way to try to do it than what you're doing. Great, cost is zero, maybe throw a few dollars at it, maybe you don't. Bottom line is you get some free research, or next to free, that helps you figure out what you can do to try to improve the process. All else fails, you got people like me that can try to help you, but like I said, I've sold a few cars one time, but I don't know anything about selling equipment here or things like that. So the bottom line is that it's just like those things in this world. If you feel like you need help, you probably don't need help. The tool, I'm spending very little time on this. The tool is, as I said, in this case, the tool is secondary to the information and research. It's not the primary thing, like the 1308 tool is definitely the primary thing. We have this tool is extremely easy to use. It requires next to no information. There's two pieces to that tool. One is what we call a qualitative assessment. And that's just basically what you think. You're just answering three questions. What kind of condition? What class of equipment am I interested in trying to figure out what this is a good idea? That was one of the things we decided. For you guys, it's not viable to have 10 different sales processes for 20 different classes of equipment. You're typically going to look at one or two classes of equipment. You generally are the ones that you have the most equipment on and see whether any of these sales channels might make sense. It's more trying to do so. Bottom line is you can say, okay, what is my average condition for this piece of equipment? What is my average? What am I currently getting on this from auction? And you answer 2 or 3 asset type, condition, and remaining life. That's the 3 things that you need. Those are all stuff that's pulled out here because you're speaking for a class of equipment, not a unit. This tool is really designed to be used for a class of equipment, multiple pieces, not one. Although honestly, it could be used for one, but it's going to be more work than typically what we want to do. The bottom line is that this tool gives you a list of pros and cons of the different market channels that we discussed, where they're given those the information you have, the type of asset, the condition it's in, and how much life it's got left. It'll tell you which of these markets make more sense for you and what's the pros and cons of those approaches. So this is what I talked about. This gives you a summary, a cheat sheet, real quickly, what the information in the report really means for you. The second one is a little more interesting in the sense that it is a quantitative tool, but all it requires is what is your current equipment as far as this class of equipment. What's the current value of that asset? How much is it going to cost you to use one of these different approaches? That's the disposal cost. And what's the other channel you're thinking about using? And what do you think the estimated cost of establishing that channel costs? Keep in mind, you guys know that if I want to establish, if I want to hire an auction company, I've got to issue an RFP. I've got to evaluate those returns I get. So everything you're looking at, like if you want to hire a broker, it takes more time. You've got to acknowledge. included. You know, you've got all these free accesses on the internet. What's the retail price of a vehicle? What's the wholesale price of that vehicle? What's the trade-in value of that vehicle? There's ratios that you can use that this model is built on to try to help them on these estimates. So it's fairly intuitive, but it's very simple. So it is. You don't have to spend a lot of time with it, just trying to help get your head around the ideas. Okay, I'm running out of time here, but this is just a snapshot of what I was talking about. This is the quantitative or qualitative model. We've got three. See those three? At the very top, I'm sure you can't read it from that distance. Those three top fields is all you've got to complete. And you push a button and it gives you that information, populates all that information for you. The other one that I was just talking about, here's the inputs there. You just populate those items in red, and you get into touch your ready number for it. It's pretty straightforward. It's fairly easy. I'm hoping that maybe next year when this will be a project, we can try to pursue some implementation money for it too, because I would really like to see at least a couple of DOTs to try to implement this information. I guess with that in mind, I'm going to show you a couple of very quick things. I think I'm almost out of time, but let me try to show something real quick. Inside the report, it's not this deck, we said what we came up with what that implementation plan was. If you're going to try to sell this program, you're going to try to convince your state to do something different here. What steps you need to do? This is just a list of 7 of the basic steps, and then the report got a lot of detail behind it. Explain what you're trying to do here. What's the goal of what it is you're trying to do? Figure out how much how much resources you're going to need to try to implement this plan. And come on to the task plan. We actually provide you a simple task plan in here. Create a schedule. This is one of the things we found is that if your boss doesn't have any expectation how long it's going to take, well, that's a hard step. If you can give people a schedule where they can sort of understand how far you're progressing and what road you can start selling. Identify what resources is this people, is this money. If there's other things you can use to make your business case, like we're getting nothing out of our equipment over here, is a list of sales, and identify some performance metrics here. And again, I'm just rushing through this quickly. It's all over the report. I encourage you to look at it. And the last thing I want to show you, because I have all that up here in just a second, is we did create a little Excel document. Yeah, right. This is an example of your interest. Let's just say you're interested in this project. You think you would like to try to do something here. This is a little tool we came up with to try to help you self-assess whether you're ready for this. And what you see here is we've only got 4 questions in it. Do you have is sufficient fleet funding available to support replacing your equipment when you want to replace it? That goes back to that question about, are you running way past what you want to? If the answer is this is a sample, it's not necessarily you can weigh it yourself. I mean, it's not like this is a hot program in here. We said 20% of the value is on that decision. If the answer was yes, you got to support it. You see, it's real simple. The second question was, do you control your assets and how they're disposed? If you don't control it, then you're asking really hard pressed to do that. We discussed earlier. We said 20% was the rate. If the answer was yes, you got another 20%. The third question was, do you get the money out of that when it's done? If you're said and done, is the DOT get those monies? If you don't get those monies, your motivation is not very high. Bottom line is our trail came up with a 10 value for that. And then the last one was a nuance. And a number of states, the DOT did get the money, but the fleet did not. It went to the DOT general fund rather than the fleet fund. Obviously, it's the same thing. You're not as motivated information pieces of the story. NCHRP 1304 was the one that looked at life cycles of equipment and come up with the cost, optimal time to replace that equipment. You actually use that model and play with some of those variables and see what the impact of decision A is versus decision B. So that gives you some input into what part of that question. If we got rid of it earlier, we would get higher returns. If we run it later, we get lower returns. That provides part of the picture. You may remember, if you were in here yesterday when we were talking about 1308, there was that decision analysis in that tool that showed what the cost of the different options were. If you repaired that thing, if you rebuilt that thing, if you replaced that thing. Now that one offers some really good, very strong, easily defended information on what the cost of those decisions are. And that's, again, so those are two pieces of the puzzle. I mean, honestly, I guess I'm trying to say, I don't think Jim's in here, but, you know, Jim and Doug, especially Jim in Connecticut, he was facing the same constraints. He had to dispose of this equipment through another government agency. He didn't get any of that money back. Well, Jim's a smart guy. He figured it out well. What happens if I trade in this thing instead of selling? Is there any legislation that stops me from doing that? Well, the answer was no. And that's what he started doing. Now that's how he's getting the proceeds from his equipment. Even though the law has not been changed, he's actually been able to recapture some of that residuals.
So we're doing something similar with light actually turn around and lease it. And it said, you know, we've proven that we can buy it and reduce costs and turn it over in 3 years and literally make money when we're sitting on that process. So we lease it, it's a higher cost. Our customers happy to have a more reliable vehicle. And the cost of the blades on the maintenance side is astronomical.
That's, I mean, you're right. It's, well, you know, that was my argument. In fact, there was an old car attendant, and I'm guessing you all are, maybe didn't down here. Remember, there was an old car attendant here in one Sunday magazines. I mean, it's not bad, that's all the next what I say. It said, you got two fleets running. You got this guy runs this fleet, he's running, and you go into the office, it's a disaster. Everything is just, it's a mess everywhere. You know, he's disorganized and so on and so forth. We've got this field over there, this guy is on top of it. He can give you every report that you ever thought of. His desk is immaculate, everything looks great. One guy gets fired, one guy doesn't. Why? Can you figure out which one? Well, the guy that gets fired is the guy that's running the old fleet. It's got these clean desks and everything looks great. He's got old equipment, but nobody's happy. Breaking down all the time. You can't generate, can't keep the equipment on the road. The other guy's running young equipment. He may not know, may not be as good a manager as the guy, but his customers are happy because he's running younger equipment and he's staying out of the shops and everybody is A-OK. So the reality is it's a whole lot on that cost continuum between capital costs and maintenance and operating costs. Once you can stay on that capital side of replacing equipment, the easier your life is. I mean, like I said, that's from the price sake. I found that out. I ran 100 tractors and 250 trailers, and I leased it off against the truck leasing. But I figured it out after everything was said and done, it cost me 2 cents a mile to lease them from Penske more than it would for me to own them. And I got rid of 1,000 units. All it took was one breakdown out of the middle of nowhere, and I locked out whatever potential savings I might have had. So, I mean, now to your point, there's all kinds of ways to skin this cat that that is a problem. But generally, if you keep your equipment replaced earlier, which is a struggle for you guys, life's a whole lot nicer, a whole lot more fun. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Question or comment back on your PennDOT, we're also tied to GPS. So our equipment is basically EPA is there selling for us. But we have a good working relationship with them. We understand, you know, the newer truck kits, less you pay for it. We had an option where they decided to So we found a learning lesson there. What trucks are valuable?
Well, you know, honestly, that's sort of the hardest thing. If you're not willing to try something every year, you're never going to, improve. But I do say that even if that experience maybe encouraged you, in one case it discouraged you, in another case, my point earlier was that you got to sustain this over time to build your market. You got to know your buyers. You got to invest time to figure out who's buying your equipment. Just put yourself in the buyer's role. Again, I don't know about you guys. I feel like I sold probably 4 or 5 vehicles myself. Right? It is a thing. I mean, you have to get phone calls from yahoos that never show up when they're supposed to, or they offer you X money and over the phone, and they get there and offer you Y money. So guess what? The last 2 cars I sold car backs just because heck, I didn't, the extra $300-400 I saved on doing mechanics. Your buyers the buyers are equipment are the same thing. If you can make this, if you can make some of these terms easier and make more people aware of it, I know Dennis did a great job down in Arizona. I mean, he had financing available, didn't Dennis, or am I mistaken?
Our government accounting office finally precluded us from doing that. They just really did not want to get involved with that. Now, my biggest customer was an order from Mexico. And when we started the class 2 or 3 or 4 rollouts, that grew your equipment, found a home real quick.
Well, I didn't mention, but and it's in the thing. Believe it or not, the state of Utah runs a retail store. They sell their vehicles at a lot, just like they were enterprise parcels. They can let the customers drive that vehicle around the lot. They will not let them get it out on the highway. They will let them, drive around, look at it. If they want to bring a mechanic in, look at it, they let them do that. And they've been doing that for a bunch of years, and they've seen their proceeds increase tremendously. Not everybody wants to get into the car business, but in the case it does prove, at least in concept, the idea that if you can, the retail buyers are the one that always is the greatest profit opportunity, particularly ones that take a lot more work. They have to staff that thing. They have a building there. They have to keep electricity. It's all not free. So, but anyway, hopefully you got some value. Again, this whole project, the PowerPoint you saw, the report, the tool will all be available. I'm guessing before the end of this year. It will also be presented at the TRD conference in January. I hope you found this information. Like I said,